Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is how pervasive Jew hatred has become in the United States. No one has a monopoly on hating Jews. This vile hatred has found its way across both sides of the political aisles. This hatred is a cancer. It is destructive. It eats away at the very fundamentals of mainstream democracy. It has spread across the United States and has taken a foothold in Europe, a serious foothold in Europe. The Jew hatred is pervasive. The situation should not go on. It must be addressed directly. The cancer must be excised. To their credit, in the United States, mainstream Republicans have lashed out at prominent, influence-wielding haters of Jews. The repeated and irrational comments from likes of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens have been called out as blatant lies. The same cannot be said for the Democratic leadership. They've remained relatively quiet in the face of the vitriol and the hatred emanating not only from their constituents, but even from elected officials. That behavior is not acceptable. It is not the American way. If it continues at this pace, it runs the risk of threatening the very fabric of the United States as we know it. It has already destroyed large swaths of Europe. Jew hatred has been called the oldest hatred for a reason. A combination of factors produced and continues to feed Jew hatred in the United States. Classic excuses have been around since antiquity. Today, the nexus of the old and the new fuels the waves of Jew hatred. Factors include religious hatred, both Christian and Muslim. It includes economic hatred, social hatred, and jealousy of the Jews in its many forms. Racism plays another very large role. So does the revival of the age-old conspiracy theories, enhanced with modern-day twists that insist that Jews control the media, the government, the politicians, countries, all kinds of things. Anti-Israel stands provide perfect cover for these heinous and erroneous theories. It allows haters to hide behind the argument that being anti-Israel and anti-Zionist is legitimate political critique, not Jew hatred. They are lying. It is one and the same. Their critique is not legit. It's filled with holes. It is never leveled at any other country, only at Israel. The Jewish state, they reject the very legitimacy of Israel's existence. They claim that Zionism and Israel are illegitimate, that Zionists and Israelis are oppressors and interlopers, and therefore all Jews are wrong. Jew haters give themselves permission to indiscriminately attack all Jews and then excuse their behavior by labeling their injustice against others as a form of resistance, and hence, Jews are fair game. Opposing policies of this Israeli government, or that Israeli government, or any government at all, is not out of bounds, but it must be done in bounds. Arguments and critique of platforms and policy happen all the time, especially in Israel. That is very different from the form of Jew hatred that we see today. Today's Jew hatred is rampant, with staunch movements and moments that lead to violent attacks and even more. The very existence of the Islamic, Iran-backed sponsored groups like Hamas and Hezbollah is predicated on the view that there is an Islamic obligation to destroy Israel and all Jews, an obligation that has been co-opted by many shiftless people looking for a cause to champion. They view Israel through the distorted lens that profiles Jews and Zionists as colonialists, whom they must remove from the Muslim lands. Socialists and communists buy into a similar anti-colonial and Western anti-capitalist view. So too the anarchists. Their immediate conclusion is that Israel is an oppressor, and hating and vilifying and attacking oppressors is okay. It's acceptable. Social media has become a major fulcrum for their hatred. Algorithms feed thoughts and ideas and conspiracies and awful stereotypes to young people. Most disturbing is that they feed this evil to some who never even thought about it, let alone asked about it. TikTok has admitted such behavior. There is no fact-checking in the new media, and the vile canard can reach millions of people in seconds. It goes unchecked. The more hits, the more people, the more it snowballs. In this new era, there are no social consequences for spreading this hatred. Much is done without attribution or sources. The new media lends safety to haters. The memory of the Holocaust is fading. October 7th, Hamas's massacre in 2023, the attack and mass murder fueled the hatred, but the seeds of hatred had already been sown. In 1975, the United Nations passed Resolution 3370, equating Zionism with racism. In 1991, it was revoked, rescinded. That resolution embedded in people the idea that Israel was not really a legitimate nation. It shaped generations of ideologues and academics and gave credence and justification to hatred. It is not enough to bemoan this rise of Jew hatred. The vile hatred must be challenged. The United States is an inspiring, creative, exciting nation composed of a mosaic. We must embrace that art because e pluribus unum, from out of many become one. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from Jerusalem Post, authored by David M. Weinberg, published May 2nd, 2026. It's entitled, In a Divided World, Israel Needs a New Hasbara Playbook. Opinion, subtitled, Traditional Public Diplomacy is Under Strain and Polarization Reshapes How Israel is Understood Abroad. Weinberg is trying to address Israel's messaging and the world's perception of Israel. He has done this before. His insight is very important. He offers both analysis and suggestions. This is how Weinberg begins. With the recent appointment of new public diplomacy chiefs in the Prime Minister's office and the Foreign Ministry, it's time to rethink approaches in Israel's Hasbara, public diplomacy. This is especially true following the war with Iran, which has alienated large segments of global opinion from Israel. After a devastating vote in Congress, where most Democratic senators voted to block the sale of munitions and military material to Israel, in the wake of renewed initiatives to boycott Israel in Europe, and given the spiraling blended anti-Semitic, anti-Israel violence everywhere, 16 months ago, I detailed in this newspaper a plan for Israel that largely has been adopted over the past year by Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar and Deputy Foreign Minister Sharon Haskell, to focus on bringing many missions of influencers to Israel. Nothing more effectively develops friends for Israel than a well-planned visit to this country. Such visits are always overwhelmingly transformative. Getting relevant influencers to visit Israel is hard work, especially since the violent anti-Israel hordes abroad are attempting to make Israel into a contaminated product, and they have succeeded in raising the social cost of sympathy and support for Israel. Indeed, in the current moment, there are certain publics that just will not visit Israel. The Foreign Ministry has facilitated the visit of more than 200 such missions over the past year. Early in 2025, I additionally outlined the necessary revolution in Israel's messaging, also adopted by Sa'ar, involving an embrace of Israeli strength and the restoration of Jewish faith to Israel's diplomatic arsenal, to match Israel's necessarily aggressive strategic and defensive posture. Now Weinberg asserts, using Uriel Zahavi's principles, that people from different worlds see things differently, so the messaging must change to accommodate the various worlds. Weinberg writes, in short, the same event enters two completely different moral processors belonging to two brutally sordid political camps with bifurcated vocabularies. In this reality, single message architecture fails. It does not land equally and simultaneously well on the moderate Democrats' core individualizing foundations or the moderate Republicans' core nationalist foundations. Instead, Zahavi would have Israel deploy multiple public diplomacy directorates that would share intelligence and research but operate with different messages and framings. Weinberg explains that now a response to Zahavi's point by a character named David Bernstein, who teaches law at George Mason Law School in Virginia. He writes, in retort to Zahavi, George Mason University law professor David E. Bernstein asserts that despite the terrible sorting into rigid rival political camps, mainstream Americans, including most Democrats, are overwhelmingly repulsed by terrorism and overt anti-Semitism. Therefore, the more that radical anti-Israel movements fuse themselves with excuses for terrorism, harassment of Jewish students, or conspiracy-laden rhetoric about Jews in power, the more they repel most Americans and Canadians and others, who still have the moral clarity to distinguish between criticizing Israeli policy and celebrating mass murder. Weinberg concludes that the extremes might not be the only path. There may be a middle ground. He writes, consequently, total polarization regarding Israel is not inevitable, and legacy Jewish organizations should not be dismantled. There might still be moderate middle to work with. This is an excellent column by David Weinberg. Thank you very much. Next up is another column from the Jerusalem Post, written by David Ben-Bassat. It appeared also on May 2nd, 2026, and it's entitled, France's Double Standards on Israel is a Betrayal of Moral Values. Subtitled opinion, Macron's diplomacy faces backlash over France's approach to Iran, Hezbollah, and Israel's defense. This is how Ben-Bassat begins. France's policy in recent years, particularly since the rise of Emmanuel Macron, amounts to nothing less than the betrayal of moral values. Behind polished language about human rights, diplomacy, and balance lies a troubling reality of hypocrisy, moral weakness, and even open hostility towards Israel and its allies. Macron's call to halt the war against Iran is not only misguided, it's entirely detached from reality. While Iran continues to promote regional terrorism, fund its proxies, and openly declare their ambition to destroy Israel, the French president chooses to point an accusing finger at those defending themselves. This is not mediation, it is moral surrender. The absurdity becomes sharper when France prohibits Iranian exiles from protesting against the regime they fled. A country that presents itself as the beacon of liberty effectively silences victims of oppression. This is not an isolated mistake, but a policy aimed at weakening those who resist tyranny, while easing the path for those who enforce it. Ben-Bassat further shows just how ridiculous France has been and the double standard that they have. Double standard is a nice term for it. He writes, France's response to October 7th Hamas attacks on Israel further exposed its true face. Instead of a clear and unequivocal condemnation of the horrific massacre carried out against civilians, the world heard hesitant language, seemingly balanced, but in practice, blurring the line between terror and self-defense. This is not a diplomatic failure, it is a moral one. That, by the way, is the second time he's used this expression. He continues, as if that were not enough, France continues to pressure Israel to halt its operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon, an armed terrorist organization backed by Iran. This demand is nothing more than an attempt to tie Israel's hands and leave its citizens exposed to ongoing threats. In other words, France is asking Israel to pay the price of its balance in the blood of its civilians. Ben-Bassat points out the role of France in World War II. He suggests, remember Vichy? He asks. Ben-Bassat writes, the problem is not limited to current policy. It runs deeper, rooted in historical pattern. During World War II, under the Vichy regime, France chose to collaborate with evil rather than fight it. Jews were sent to death camps not only by the Nazis, but also with the assistance of French institutions. It was a betrayal of the very values France claimed to uphold. The resemblance to past events is troubling. Then, as now, France chose comfort and avoidance of justice over clear moral standing. Then, as now, it preferred to look away. France is choosing to tolerate radical Islam that is taking control of entire areas where law enforcement hesitates to even enter, and where religious figures impose local interpretations of Sharia law. Benbassat points out that France has lost its moral compass, and that also it has lost its credibility. He writes, Macron's France has lost its moral compass. It speaks of human rights while restricting freedom of expression. It speaks of peace while condemning those who fight terrorism. It speaks of justice while ignoring the aggressor. Benbassat concludes asking a profound question, doubting that France has learned anything at all from its past behavior and from its own history. He writes, such a policy harms not only Israel but France itself. It undermines the credibility, weakens its international standing, and distances it from its natural allies. Worse still, it sends a dangerous message that the West is not united against the threats of terrorism. History has taught that weakness in the face of evil does not lead to peace, but to disaster. France has been there before and paid a heavy price. The question is whether it has learned the lesson or whether it is repeating it, this time under the guise of diplomacy. This is an excellent column. Thank you, David Benbassat. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 7 cartoons today. Some of these are biting, some are funny, and some are both. This first cartoon asks a critical question about the news. It's a question I get all the time. A couple is sitting on the couch, and the husband asks, do you want to watch the real news, the fake news, or the news we don't know is real or fake? Of course, present company excluded, that is a real question, and one I get all the time. How do you know what is true or not in the news? The answer I give is that hopefully you learn to rely on trusted thinkers. Next up is a cartoon of similar themes, repeated all the time. The blue is the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump is painted himself into it. These next 2 cartoons are about the No Kings movement in the United States, except, of course, for Charles, the King of the United Kingdom. In one case, it's King Charles without a crown, saying to Trump with a crown, no kings. Another one says, a placard, no kings, but Charles is cool. This cartoon is entitled End Authoritarianism by Harley Schwagderon. 2 protests, one in Iran and one in the United States. Same placards. Operation Epstein Fury by John Darko from the Columbia Missourian. It suggests that Iranian Operation Epic Fury is to deflect and distract from the Epstein files. And finally, this last cartoon is entitled Board of Oil Peace by Marian Kamensky of Austria. She is suggesting that the entire Iran-US war, the battle, everything is itself destructive, and everyone is going to meet the devil who is in the flames at the bottom of the cartoon. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Before rejecting the Iranian plan, US President Donald Trump wrote on his social media platform, Truth Social, that he will soon review Iran's new proposal to end the war. I will soon review the plan that Iran has sent. But I cannot imagine it will be acceptable given that they have not yet paid a heavy enough price for what they have done to humanity and the world over the past 47 years. He wrote, earlier the president was asked by reporters about possible resumptions of strikes on the Islamic Republic, and he replied, there's a possibility that could happen. Israel's foreign ministry denied claims that, in Lebanon, the IDF destroyed a monastery in the village of Yaron, in the country's south, near the border between Israel and Lebanon. The ministry released a photo of the structure and wrote, The claims that the monastery was destroyed are false. The site is intact and secure, the ministry said in a statement. It also noted that, and I'm quoting again, in recent weeks, Hezbollah has fired toward Israel from the monastery's vicinity. IDF operations in the area were directed against Hezbollah infrastructure, while taking measures to ensure the monastery and other religious sites remained unharmed. A phenomenon of a halo around the sun was observed across Israel. The director of the Meteorological Service, Dr. Amir Givati, explained the phenomenon. The halo forms when there are high-altitude clouds in the sky, as we see today, which are typical of heat wave conditions. These clouds reach us from the south in the upper layers of the atmosphere, Dr. Givati added, because they are at a high altitude of 6 to 8 kilometers. In the atmosphere, they are made of ice particles. The meeting between the sun's rays and the small ice particles creates a halo around the sun. Indeed, a rare sight. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said in an interview with the BBC that some pro-Palestinian marches should be banned outright. According to him, and I'm quoting, when there are calls at protests like Globalize the Intifada, they are completely beyond the pale. Starmer also said that stricter oversight should be applied to the language used by protesters at marches, and that the public should be carefully considered whether they are taking part in protests that use such language. The laws of freedom of speech in the UK are much more restrictive than they are in the United States and in Israel. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations announced it received a report from a cargo ship that it was attacked by small vessels near Iran by approximately 20 kilometers from the island city of Sirik, located in the Strait of Hormuz. According to the report, the crew members are safe. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. We spend way too much time contemplating difficult and deep issues, sad and sometimes depressing ones. We should not lose track of the remarkable life and creativity that is in Israel, that is Israel. Israel is a culinary mecca. The food is unparalleled. Here are two short clips of Tel Aviv Food World. The first is a TikTok video with Morgan Brown and Adina Sussman in the Tel Aviv Shuk HaCarmel. The second is 4 foodies on Shankin Street, the Greenwich Village of Tel Aviv. Watch these videos.
I tagged along with Adina Sussman for a Shuk HaCarmel food crawl, and she's a celebrity cookbook author and knows this market like the back of her hand. So here's everything that you need to try on your next visit. We started the morning with a crispy lachoch sandwich from Irit. It's a Yemenite flatbread topped with grated tomato, shug, and veggies. And Irit herself is the biggest personality I met on the trip, so you're guaranteed to have a good time. Next, we tried Ish Tabach. They have a famous schnitzel stuffed challah sandwich with fried eggplant, matbucha, tahini, and hot peppers. And it was definitely our heaviest bite of the tour. We stopped at Maguga Lawach for another Yemenite dish that's basically the Jewish version of a burrito. It's buttery, flaky malawach rolled up with a hard-boiled egg, grated tomato, and more shug, and this one was my favorite bite of my entire trip to Tel Aviv. We went classic at Falafel Elad. Pita filled with hot falafel, chopped salad, sauerkraut, tahini, amba, and charif. It was spicy and perfect, and then we cooled off with the fresh sabra fruit juice from Tikva Juice next door. It's super sweet and refreshing for the rest of your tour. We obviously had to stop at Habarika for a Libyan barika with a fried egg and mashed potatoes stuffed into a pita with pepper paste. And then comes M25. I tried my first arise here back in 2018. It's a pita stuffed with spiced meat and grilled until the outside is crispy and the inside is juicy. You can't leave the shuk without trying these. And finally, no visit to the shuk is complete without the best hummus I've ever had from Shlomo and Doron. They have the most creative combos like falafel hummus and my personal favorite shakshumus, which is just what it sounds like, shakshuka spooned over a creamy hummus. Okay, bye now. Thanks for watching and hope you have an amazing food tour. And if you're lucky enough to see Adina in the shuk, make sure you say hi.
I love great food. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.